The community really was so shocked at what he had done. Eddie would do this? Overall color of this season was green. It was also used to sort of suggest Ed's schizophrenia. Hi, my name is Matthew Flood Ferguson. I was the production designer on Monster, the Ed Gein Story, and we are going behind the scenes with Collider. We researched a lot of crime scene photos. Life magazine, actually, once the crime hit, I had a great researcher, Morgan Underwood. There were crime scene photos from Life magazine, and it showed what was going on in his house. So we pretty much recreated everything. There wasn't really anything that we did not show. Objects that he made, the body parts, obviously, and Bernice Worden. We didn't really hold back anything in particular. Our exteriors were shot in Illinois, and we were shooting in the dead of winter. It was very cold, so we had to start prep way in advance. I had a location team start in the summer to start scouting what our exterior would be, and they found this great old farmhouse in the northern part of Illinois. I flew out, scouted it, thought this is going to be perfect. Then I went back to LA, started working with my set designer, Kristen Davis, and supervising art director, Helen Harwell, in kind of researching and starting the design of the house based on historic fact and images. His bed had been pushed up against a door. In looking at the photos of the exterior of the house based on the windows, we discovered that he was living his bed, he had pushed it up against the side entrance of the house. And I just found that to be such an sort of insight into his psyche. We recreated that on stage. We had his bed pushed up against a side door that took you outside. Because of the harsh conditions in Illinois, for the exterior, we had to start prepping in the fall. And we built the exterior of the barn at that location. The interior of the barn was about 3 hours south of the house location. 3 different locations for his house, the exterior of his house, and the barn. So when Ed Gein is in the barn, we used a location on the southern part of the state. We built a set inside that barn. When he comes out of the barn, we're back now the northern part of the state. Then he goes into the house, and then we're on the soundstage in LA. So there was a lot of tracking of different locations and making sure that it was all seamless when it's cut together, that it seems like it's all connected. Surveying the locations, the exterior locations, matching the size of the doors and the windows that we need to match on stage, building the exterior of the barn to match for the interior. So it's really kind of tracking as much as you can and also anticipating the unknown in terms of how they're going to shoot this scene, because I don't know. I can sort of suggest, ways to cover it. I have to be at 3 places at once all the time. Color is a big part of design. Overall color of this season was green. Green was actually a very popular color in the 40s. Historically, it was a color that was used a lot, but it was also used to sort of maybe suggest Ed's schizophrenia. He started to see things in green, especially as the story progresses. When he meets Bernice Worden, she's all in green. She invites him for a date in the back of her hardware store, and we did that all in green. And then eventually, when he kills her, the first time you see blood, you see it through his eyes, and it's actually green. Green really kind of started to work as a metaphor or as an idea of maybe his psyche and his schizophrenia. Adeline's colors were more like mauve and salmon, a dusty salmon. And so her interior for her house, we painted all these different shades of mauve. When they go to the roller rink, which we built, I actually ended up using the exact same colors because it was their first date. And so to me, it represented Adeline in the moment of happiness. So we took those same colors, mixed them around, and then used them again. So Adeline was kind of in the mauves and the pinks. Ed was kind of green and red. Once we decide, okay, green is our color, the prop department, they're fantastic. They'll bring in elements where they can use a little bit of green, maybe in the ribbon. She gives them a gift. Wardrobe will use it for Adeline's undergarments. It's just little pops that we start to use throughout. To me, you never want the design of a show to overtake the story. It's sort of like an orchestra supporting a singer is in the background. It helps carry the story forward, but really it should be about the actors and the script. As we move along, because we don't have the scripts all in advance, there are moments that kind of present themselves to where, oh, let's put a little green here, a little green there. So once you get into the rhythm of like, okay, this is our color palette, how do we carefully use it? Those opportunities sometimes present themselves. The way we block a scene, if we need a poster, if we need a curtain, whatever, it just sort of starts to evolve. It evolves as we go. I'm a film buff, so I really loved that aspect of our script. Robert Bloch, who wrote the novel Psycho, lived in Wisconsin, and I believe he lived in the next county over. That inspired him to write the character Norman Bates. I knew that going into this job. And once when Ryan said we're going to be touching on Psycho, touching on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then Silence of the Lambs, I was, excited and take on the challenge of recreating those sets. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's a low-budget film. It's not really easy to see. Sometimes you do screen grab. It's hard to really read what you're looking at, to understand the scale of the space. So it took a lot of pieces, like a puzzle, putting together a puzzle to try to understand how big the house was, where the rooms laid out with each other so that we could build it on a soundstage. That was very challenging to recreate, but we did it. We recreated the whole house, the dining room with all of the bone furniture. You don't really see all of it in the finished cut, but we would watch the film over and over again, screen grab it, look at the chairs made of bones, then trying to find the color, match the wallpaper, match the tone of the stain on the wood, build the tables, build the furniture, go out, and then we would build it. Each set was challenging, but also rewarding because we tried to recreate it as accurately as possible. It's a bit of detective work. We try to be as precise as possible. I have a great prop department. The bags and the tags, all of that sort of falls under the prop department. Crime scene photos. My office was filled with Ed Gein all over the walls, pictures. We strive to be as historically accurate as possible. It is a sensitive subject, and you want to be respectful of family members that are still living. We have a great researcher, Morgan Underwood, and I work very closely with her. And so we discovered really interesting things. The community as on a whole really was so shocked at what he had done. Everybody thought of him, knew of him as this nice, quiet, kept to himself guy. A friend of mine who lives here in LA, her family grew up next door to Ed Gein. She remembered her uncle being so surprised, and they kept saying, Eddie would do this? Like everybody was so shocked because on the outside, he was this very mild-mannered, sort of quiet, kept to himself guy. In the newspapers, we would research, be a big article about the crime. But then on the left side or the right side would be anecdotes from locals talking about how nice he was, how quiet he was. So there was a real contrast. The takeaway was on the outside, this sort of mild-mannered, a little bit odd person did these horrible, horrible crimes that nobody knew about. Each job is so different. The Midwest, Plainfield, Wisconsin in the sort of 40s and 50s. We built the house from scratch, got the wallpaper. There was a company in New York that sells and specializes in vintage wallpaper. So I would order rolls. They're very expensive. Get them out to LA, look at them, choose which ones we were going to use throughout the house. Then we would scan them. Pretty much everything is from scratch. The overall tone of the sets and the world that sort of surrounded him, and it was a little depressing, and it was sort of subdued. There was nothing really bright. Everything was sort of aged and old, and so tonally, we wanted it to feel depressing. I looked at so many photographs from post-Depression era of like these families living in the country, living in the Midwest. I really tried to capture that, use that in terms of the world of Ed Gein. The graveyard was very challenging because, again, we were shooting in Illinois in the dead of winter. It was freezing. We found a location and we built the sign, Plainfield Cemetery, as he drives in. But the majority of our scenes, we recreated the graveyard on a soundstage in LA and built all of the tombstones and the crypts. Then once we shot all the scenes in LA, we shipped them all out to Illinois, set them up at the location for the wides. So that was very challenging because we shot all of sort of the intimate close-up scenes on stage without knowing how we would capture it in the wides to, again, try to make it match. For me, the house needed to be in snow. When he was caught, it was winter. There are crime scene photos of him being caught. The house is there, bleak, white snow, bare trees. When we got there, right before we started shooting, there was a blizzard. We were just covered in snow. So we got all of our wides. We got Ed coming from the barn. Then the weather started to heat up and it melted. So we had to go back and forth, and then it snowed again. We brought in fake snow so that we could match what we'd established in the wides. So we went back and forth where the weather was extremely freezing, warmed up, snow would melt, then it would get cold again. It became tracking the snow.